the Plastics Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Program. That's too bad. That's too bad. That's what we really do the pressure. Right? Okay, we'll let you begin. I understand we have somebody pitch hitting for Director Heller. Right?
Yes, thank you very much, and hello, Chair and members. I'm Mindy McIntyre. I'm the Chief Deputy with Cal Recycle, and I have with me Brandy Hunt. And as you said, we're pinch hitting for our Director, Zoe Heller, who can't be here today, and she sends her apologies.
Okay.
So SB 54. SB 54 represents the most ambitious reform of plastics and packaging.
Could you pull it a little closer?
SB 54 represents the most ambitious reform of plastics and packaging management in state history. The law goes further than any other state in cutting single-use plastic at the source and marks a major step forward towards the circular economy. Cal Recycle is committed to implementing this law in a way that achieves the goal of reducing plastic waste and supporting a circular economy while also minimizing costs. In the coming year, Cal Recycle will continue to work with all interested parties to adopt regulations in a manner that seeks to achieve this balance. Cal Recycle has been working to implement SB 54 statute since 2023. We have held 7 informal regulatory workshops in 2023 to solicit feedback on preliminary regulations concepts from the stakeholder community. We've appointed a 13-member advisory committee board. We have published a list of covered material categories as required by the law. In January 2024, Cal Recycle selected the Circular Action Alliance as the PRO, the Producer Responsibility Organization, to implement SB 54. Cal Recycle also initiated the formal rulemaking process in March of 2024, and we held 3 public comment periods, the last one ending in December. To establish a baseline for SB 54's source reduction baseline, Cal Recycle conducted an analysis of the amount of single-use plastic packaging and food serviceware sold, offered for sale, or distributed in California in 2023, and Cal Recycle released the report in December 2024. We appreciate the legislature's partnership in advancing this work and look forward to sharing next steps in the coming months as we work to implement SB 54. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. We'll hold our questions till we hear from all the witnesses. Anything you want to add?
Nothing to add at this time.
Thank you. Our next witness, Department of Finance.
Department of Finance, John Parsons.
Great. LAO.
Frank Jimenez with the Legislative Analyst's Office. No prepared remarks for this informational item, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I have lots of questions, but I'll defer to my colleagues first and then hit it. Mr. Rogers.
No, thank you so much. I think we probably have some similar questions, mostly about the delay in the regulations. If you can kind of tell us a little bit about why was that caused, what can people expect in the future? If you have to go back to the drawing board, is that going to increase the cost, staff time? What are the actual implications for that of the implementation?
Thank you for that question. So the delay of SB 54, SB 54 is quite a complex bill, as we all are familiar with. And so the delay in regulations is really a step back to really take the time to consider all of the comments that we received in the regulatory process and to reevaluate how we can, again, meet the needs of statute while also minimizing the impacts on all stakeholders. So we don't necessarily need to go back to the drawing board from scratch. We do have a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of input from stakeholders as well as a lot of evaluation of the statute itself, and we have done a lot of coordinating with stakeholders on how to develop the regulations in a way that works for everyone. So we are taking that into the next round of regulation, so we will reinitiate the regulatory process. And we are, of course, committed to all of the deadlines in the bill and meeting those statutory requirements.
So do you have an expected timeline?
We're evaluating that right now and evaluating all options on how we can implement the regulations as quickly as possible.
You got very specific answers there, right? I'm going to, this is a significant issue for the Assembly and for members in the Assembly, so I want to emphasize how important this is. There was a deadline, and when you say you take the deadline seriously and you want to do that, this is a deadline that's not been met. And about the only people I can find that are okay with the deadline not being met are people from industry. And so you have this, we've had this normal tension that's been out there between industry and the people that have advanced a potential initiative and people advancing the bill that was the compromise. And so this was not a small deal on the part of the Assembly. And as you pointed out, it's the most historic change in sort of plastic recycling that is out there. So when we say, hey, you know, this is a complex bill, we need the time to be able to do this, we need to hear what was it about this that wasn't anticipated. We knew it was a complex bill a year and a half ago when we, you know, sort of reached all these deals and everything else. So we knew it was complex. We knew it was going to take a lot of energy, and yet we didn't meet the deadline. So it would be helpful for us if we had some idea of what part of the complexity or what part of the regulation is the part that you're not comfortable with yet, that you have to that you say, hey, we have to make the fairly significant step of not meeting the deadline, of going public with not meeting the deadline, and because there's this part. So are you able to let us know anything about which part of the complexity is the part that you're struggling with that's not done yet, assuming there a whole lot of things must be done to your satisfaction at this point in time? Can you help us with that?
Yeah, and thank you so much for the question. And we know that this bill and the measure is important to the Assembly as well as the Senate. We absolutely understand that. And having been the Ledge Director when this particular bill passed, I absolutely understand the efforts that the Assembly put in to help negotiate and balance 54. So the department is absolutely committed to SB 54. We have a team of very dedicated folks that are working on developing these regulations. As mentioned, it is the first of its kind, this bill, and it is by far the broadest and biggest EPR program we have ever implemented. It has novel components that don't exist in any other EPR bill, including source reduction, including an eco-modulated fee, and including
The second thing, source reduction, and included.
Eco-modulated fee.
Okay, right.
Which is quite complex. So we do need to get it right because we recognize that eyes are on California. Director Heller would be saying the same thing. She's very dedicated to getting this right and moving it forward in a way that it's going to be successful, and we can demonstrate that California can, in fact, achieve this large EPR program. I think we do need to work through some of the timelines with the PRO to make sure that they can meet some of the reporting requirements. Again, this is the first of its kind, and the plans and reports that we will need in order to meet these ambitious goals are different than what we've seen before. So we are working on those details, and again, we will provide the more detail to the legislature, and you guys will be very involved in understanding what the regulations package will look like going forward.
So how much of it is a need for you to work with industry to understand the industry's input about the regulations that have been out there so that you feel like you can have regulations that will be practical in terms of implementation?
We'll be engaging again in the regulatory process. It allows us to take public comment and input, and we received a lot of letters in the last comment period. And the way the regulations process works is that you get those comments, and if you make changes, you need to open up another comment period. So even to address the comments we last had, we need to have another round of language that can address some of the components that we hadn't seen before. So we're really going to be relying on the regulations process to get some of that input.
So is it safe to say that the industry opened opened some issues that you now feel like you need more time to be able to evaluate?
In fairness, a lot of stakeholders have raised issues on how we can improve the regulatory process and the regulations themselves. So it won't be just industry. The regulations process is open to all of the stakeholders.
Great. And then I privately, I'm hearing that privately you think you can have this done by the end of summertime. Is that a ballpark area? I know you're not ready to commit to a specific thing publicly, but ballpark, are we talking about end of summer, or are we talking about 2 years from now? Which is closer.
Yeah, CalRecycle is committed to doing this as quickly as possible. I think it would be very ambitious to do by summer, but we will be looking to do it as quickly as possible.
You see, it's very ambitious to do it by the end of summer.
The regulatory process has very significant timelines that are built in from OAL, and so we're going to be following that process, but looking to achieve those goals as quickly as possible.
And when you say there's regulatory, process has very specific deadlines built into it, those deadlines are relative to what the goal is in terms of being finished. It'd be helpful if we knew what your goal was, even if you said, tell us your goal is, you should be able to look at the regulatory process. You know all the deadlines. You say this is this complex. This is the problem. So you guys have all that inside information. Can you then just give us the goal? Not that but it'd be helpful for us if we knew the goal was by the end of summer, by the end of this year, or literally 2 years from now. What are you shooting for? Not just as fast as possible, which is nice, but doesn't tell us much. Can you help us with that, please?
Again, we're committed to the timelines in statute, which would have the PRO delivering to CalRecycle a plan by January 1, 2027. So our goal is to have regulations in place well ahead of that so that they have information on how to develop that plan. So that would be by
Thank you.
2026.
Okay. Then how do you plan on funding for the revisions of the regulations? So you've got some funding issues there. What's your plan for that?
John Parsons, Department of Finance.
Sean, you got to get that closer to your mouth.
John Parsons,
Yeah.
Department of Finance.
These guys all want to lean instead of pull, right? I don't know. Right. Go ahead.
As far as the funding so far from the BCRF loans, there's been about $21 million in loans in the past couple of years. About 14 million of that has been spent out of the 21. So we haven't spent as much as we had the authority to spend. And in 24-25, there's also another plan potentially to have another loan of about 9.4 million.
Okay. So you have enough funds, you think, to handle the funding you need for these rule revisions, these regulation revisions?
The fund
This
for
new round.
beverage container recycling fund is in a healthy position right now, so they can support these short-term loans until the billing of the PROs occurs in 26-27.
So how will the fact that the governor didn't submit the regulations, how's that impact the beverage container recycling fund loan used for the regulation development? Is it going to be...
As far as the regulations not going through, I don't think it impacts the beverage container recycling fund, given the fact that we anticipated giving these loans anyway. I don't know that we've gotten to the point where we're going to increase the loans that were already anticipated. We haven't gotten to that point yet and discussed what that would entail.
So you're saying you don't anticipate that you're going to need more funds to complete the regulations and ensure you're going to meet the, if we're talking about 2027, September of 2027, and we've got a 2032 deadline, set under Prop 54, you're saying you're okay in terms of the funds that you need?
As far as the funding that's been provided from BCRF to this point, we don't see an issue with. We would have to have further discussions with CalRecycle as to what additional funding they may need, in addition to what we've anticipated. As I said earlier, 24-25, we've anticipated another potential loan of about $10 million. But during this process, CalRecycle is sort of formulating what their strategy is at this point, and whether they would need additional funding beyond that.
Well, the goal of this subcommittee has, as much as possible, tried to match expenses with the cause of the expenditure. And to the extent that we're doing loans from the beverage recycle program, we're getting further and further away from that. So we're trying to, as fast as we can, get these regulations in, try to get the match of these expenditures, try to get the cost of the program down by having the producer responsibility benefits of having them say, well, now that we're on the hook for it, we're going to design the packaging differently. We're going to design the delivery differently. We're going to design recycling, differently as it goes forward. So we've got a public trust challenge. CalRecycle has a public trust challenge in front of them. Any new ideas in terms of how you're going to build and maintain public trust as we go forward? Does the department have some great program we can cite or look forward to?
Well, CalRecycle has a strong track record of implementing EPR, and we also did go through quite a robust stakeholder process, and we look forward to re-engaging with those stakeholders to deliver on these regulations going forward.
All right. So I've tried to be clear about how important this is, about how this not meeting the deadline has shaken things. At the same time, we want the department to be really successful at doing this. This is a huge thing for California. And I want to take this moment to try to point out our biggest advocates for this are the cities and the counties that represent the ratepayers who are paying rates that keep going up and up for the recycling of waste. And so we will have a lot of people, and I want to get this on your radar screen at CalRecycle. We'll have a lot of people say, oh, you can't charge these higher fees for this. You can't charge these fees for this part of the CalRecycle program. But if charging these fees at the beginning creates the incentive program to not have the waste hit the waste stream in the first place, so we have these bigger fees, it is always more expensive to clean the trash up than it is to not have the trash in the first place. And so please keep that in mind as you have pushback on these fees, that we will be able to show you on the other side of it all of the League of Cities and the counties and everybody else as the strong advocates to reduce the cost of the programs that they're running and therefore keep rates down. So this is not a net increase in cost to the consumer. It's going to be a net decrease. It's, again, cheaper to keep the bottle out of and the trash out of the canal than it is to try to get the stuff out of the canal. Assemblymember Rogers.
No, I appreciate the discussion. You mentioned that the BCRF fund was looking healthy. Is that, to me, that's not always a good thing, because if I remember correctly, this is supposed to be the payback when people return their cans and other types of beverages. We have been having significant challenges in California, but especially in Northern California, with facilities shutting down so that there's less access for people to take advantage of that program, even though they're charged for that program when they purchase something that's eligible. So is that healthy feeling that you have from the BCRF actually a lack of investment in people's ability to participate in the program?
Appreciate that question. As you've mentioned, the BCRP is also going through its own reassessment, and the same year that SB 54 passed, we saw SB 1013, which not only included wine and spirits into the program, which increased the amount that we're getting in redemption funds. So that has a positive impact on the fund condition. But it also allowed us to develop new ways of providing consumer convenience and collection and allowing consumers to get back their CRV, including new dealer co-ops. Those are just rolling out this year. And so we're anticipating that those are going to assist, especially in areas, as you're talking about, that have been traditionally difficult to serve. So you're right that there have been challenges, and there is action taking place to try to address that and allow consumers to get back their CRV.
So then looking upstream, to use the term, in a couple of years, do you anticipate that the loan from the BCRF into this other program, that then we're going to have to come back and backfill that once people are actually able to utilize this program?
So the BCRF does have a significant surplus that's kind of residual from the pandemic. When we saw the pandemic, beverage containers sales went way up, and beverage container returns were steady or even fell during that time. And so the beverage container program does have a bit of a surplus right now, so we don't anticipate that that will be a problem going forward. But we are looking to invest, and in fact, again, the legislature has allocated a significant and historic amount of investment in the beverage container program to expand the types and ways of redeeming consumer redemption. So we don't anticipate that it will have that impact because of the buffer that's in the program now, but we will be, of course, monitoring that very closely.
Do you know what the surplus is?
Good morning. Again, Brandy Hunt, Deputy Director of Administration, Finance, and Information Technology at CalRecycle. Looking at our fund condition statement, prior year, which is the actuals where we've closed our books, we ended at $889 million. And then moving to 24-25, which is our current year, we're looking at ending at $455 million. So we're committed to getting all of those incentive dollars out, which will reduce the balance.
Great. And is there anything additional proposed? You mentioned you've got the program that's starting up this year. With that $459 million, is there any other expanded programs that you're looking at to try to make sure that other people have access?
So as Brandy mentioned, we have significant amounts of grants and loans going out. That is anticipated in getting the $455 million down to $455 million, but that's significant investment. So we don't have any plans beyond those, but we are happy to discuss if the legislature would like to.
Great, thank you. And then before I turn back over the microphone, I do want to just punctuate the point that the chair made that probably by the May revise, when we're talking about this, I'm going to want to hear a pretty concrete timeline for those regulations. There's no way for us to hold people accountable if we don't have a timeline associated with it.
Absolutely understand and appreciate that request.
Famous line out there: no deadline, no accountability. Right. Members, anything else? Assemblymember Conley.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I think the Chair covered a couple of my questions, and apologies, I was presenting a bill in another committee. This may have been already addressed, but kind of sharing some of the concerns about the delay or withholding of the regulations. Is California on track to meet the goals outlined in SB 54 by 2032?
Well, SB 54 included a number of measures for CalRecycle to implement in addition to the regulations. So we are on track in almost all of those requirements, including delivering on the source reduction report that was delivered in late December of last year, as well as the covered material categories list that we were also asked to deliver on before January 1 of this year. So those progress metrics are continuing, and as mentioned, the first statutory deadline for the PRO is January 1, 2027, and we do anticipate we will be able to meet that timeline.
I appreciate that. So maybe specifically focusing on the delay for this purpose, will the delay affect California's ability to meet the 2032 targets set under SB 54?
So again, the first plan is due in January 1, 2027, and the PRO will need to provide us a plan to meet that timeline of the first deadline is 2028, and then ultimately the 65% in 2032.
And then finally, what were the specific reasons for withholding the regulations?
So as mentioned, the regulatory package and the bill itself is quite complex, and delaying the regulatory package allows us to address some of the significant comments that we received in the last comment period and address some of the issues that were raised after that last round of regulations was issued.
Okay, any further? Great. We'll continue to obviously dig deeper on this, but appreciate you being here, and obviously we'll continue the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll wrap this up with a couple of comments. Number one, when Director Heller, when it was discovered that she wasn't going to be able to be here today, I'm sure you guys everybody was anxious to be the ones to show up for this presentation. So we appreciate you being here today in terms of trying to answer our questions. But we unfortunately walk out of here with questions that we still feel unanswered. And the point that I hope you can take back to everybody in the agency, and particularly Director Heller, if she's not paying attention to this right now, is that this was a very clear mandated deadline and a very high profile deadline that's out there. And so it is understandable that sometimes things come up and you can't meet a deadline. When that happens, it seems like the burden is on the people that are not meeting their mandatory deadline to be very clear about why. And so to get answers that leave us still unclear as to why is, I would offer, not a healthy way for an agency to move forward in terms of building up that trust and credibility. I'm perfectly fine to say extend the deadline if you can give me a good reason. But to just say we want more time because this is complex and some things came up, it would be very helpful for us to know what are those things. And to not hear a reason why you can't tell us what those things are is also not a healthy way for us to have this relationship. So early when Secretary Crowfoot was here, I specifically talked about there is always going to be tension when you have three different the Senate, the Assembly, and the executive branch trying to do things. There's going to be tension, and there'll be disagreements. But if we can do it all professionally, we can increase the chances of us coming up with good government. We're left in the dark here about what your anticipated game plan. There must be an anticipated game plan in terms of how fast you think you can do this to make this. But we're being left in the dark in terms of that. We're being left in the dark in terms of what the problem is. And the implication is that it's just not that big of a deal. And I don't think that that's the impression that Cal Recycle should be leaving on the public, on the Assembly members, that we can just meet that deadline. We don't have to offer any significant justification for that, and we don't even have to offer what the new deadline is. That's going to leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And if there's a legitimate reason, it'd sure be nice to know, because we want to be your biggest advocates. We want this to work. We want to be there for you as you go forward. So if you'll pass that along, that I hope Cal Recycle recognizes how big of a deal this is and how much more justification we wish we would be getting. And we're scratching our heads. And when people are scratching their heads, and they fill in the blanks. Oh, it's because of this and this and this, which are usually, they don't fill in the blanks with things that are the most generous, for the agency and for the politics involved there and stuff. So with that, we wish you well. We hope we get there, and I think we've adequately expressed the frustration that so many members have expressed us and asked us to express to you.
Absolutely, and appreciate that. And if I may, Director Heller absolutely wanted to be here today. She's not feeling well and was not able to be here, but I can tell you she's very committed, and Cal Recycle, our entire staff, are very committed and understand the importance and the opportunity we have here in California, and we are absolutely committed to meeting the goals and timelines of SB 54 to the
Great.
extent
We wish you
practical.
well. Good luck. All right. We'll go to issue 4.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Issue 4 is Textiles SB 707.
Yeah.
SB 707, the Responsible Textile Recovery Act of 2024, establishes the nation's first extended producer responsibility program for textiles. It requires apparel and textile producers to develop and fund recycling, repair, and disposal programs to reduce textile waste. Key provisions include developing a producer responsibility organization and developing a stewardship plan to meet the goals of the program. It also outlines funding and fees and costs to be repaid by producers. The law aims to reduce textile waste, promote sustainability, and support a circular economy by holding producers accountable. CalRecycle's BCP requests 27 permanent ongoing positions to be phased in over 2 fiscal years, 18 PYs in 2025-26, and ongoing and 9 PYs in 2027-28, with an ongoing total cost of $4.552 million to implement SB 707. CalRecycle additionally requests the loan to be equally split between the Beverage Container Recycling Fund and the Electronic Waste Recovery and Recycling Account to cover the implementation costs until reimbursement by the Producer Responsibility Organization. SB 707 aims to address the significant environmental impact of textile waste. In 2021, approximately 1.2 million tons of textiles were discarded in California, with only 15% being reused or recycled. By shifting the responsibility of textile waste management to producers, the Act seeks to promote a circular economy, encourage sustainable practices in the fashion and textile industries, and reduce the burden on landfills. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any other presentations? Right. All righty. Great. I have questions. Any members have questions? A few things. Number one, I'm going to go back to our last item because there's just one point I wanted to point out, and that is at the top of our staff report, there is the quote from Governor Newsom, and when he signed SB 54, he said, we have to act now with urgency to give our kids a future without plastic pollution. And so when you have that kind of mandate from the governor, we have to act now with urgency, and we put a deadline on when we want to have the regulations out, then it feels like something's wrong. There's a disconnect going on with that sense of urgency. And in many ways, this applies to sort of where we're going here now with this next one. Although, when you're talking with plastic, 12 million metric tons entering the ocean, 12 million metric tons entering the ocean of plastic every year annually, a dump truck of plastic pollution every 45 seconds. That's real urgency, all right, that we have. So if we're delaying regulations because it's not as convenient to implement, that's probably not a very good reason. If we're delaying it because literally we can't get it right unless we delay it, that's a different thing, and I'd love to have heard more about that. Which takes me to my comments here about this. This is going to be a challenging one and a complex one also. And the thing that I think is going to be most complex is there are so many producers, and there are people coming into the field and going out of the field, and we don't have the same kind of infrastructure or culture of recycling that we already have for many of the plastic products that are out there. So I really wish you well on this. This is an important one. By comparison to the plastics, get the plastic ones done right. That has to be the urgency. But this one's going to be a really important one in the long run. We have to change sort of the whole way we handle, but this buy it, wear it, throw it away culture is not going to be sustainable for us. So I just recognize that there's lots of complications with that. So I will, what's the budget bill language does the department need to implement this budget change proposal, and why?
John Parsons, Department of Finance. The budget bill language would require loan authority language that would allow for BCRF and e-waste to transfer the split of the $4.5 million.
Okay. And then the ongoing cost of the positions requested, the $4.5 million, until Cal Recycle gets reimbursed from the PRO, the Producer Responsibility Organizations. How confident is the department that the two funds that are providing loans will be able to incur this ongoing cost until the PRO can reimburse the department? What's your confidence level?
As we mentioned earlier, BCRF is in a pretty healthy state at $450 million in current year. E-waste, we have not fully reconciled e-waste and that fund condition, but SEO reports indicate it's about 196 as of the end of 2024 fiscal year.
Okay, so we can put you down as 100% confident, right? Guarantee for us. Right?
99.
There you go. Great. Thank you. And then statutory deadlines included in SB 707 for implementation. What are they?
Sure. SB 707 requires PRO applications due to Cal Recycle by January 1, 2026. Cal Recycle must approve a PRO by March 1, 2026. All producers of covered products must join the approved PRO by July 1, 2026. The PRO must submit an initial statewide needs assessment by March 1, 2027. Cal Recycle shall adopt regulations to implement the program. This is actually interesting language. No earlier than 2028, July 1 of 2028. 30 days after the regs are approved, producers shall provide a list of brands of covered products to the department. Cal Recycle may establish, review, or adjust performance standards by March 1, 2032. Producers of covered products shall achieve performance standards after the March 1, 2032.
That is interesting language in terms of that. But these are the statutory deadlines, and that's that's what everybody should be intending to live with.
Absolutely.
Right. Great. Thank you. I want to point out to everybody that this is an item that is recommended by staff that we approve as budgeted. So it's not going to be an item we're going to be coming back to. Just want to make sure that that's in terms of revisiting and stuff, that everybody's aware of that. All righty, great. Anything else anybody have on this? All right, let's go to issue 5, please. Thank you. And this is the LA fires on state parks.